proves we can't ever really know what's going on.
Appearances can be deceptive. Tom, I was just speculating about a hypothesis. I know I don't know nothing. Uncertainty. That is appropriate for matters of this world. There. Prentice back.
Welcome to Framework. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I'm pretty good, man. We're, doing the Coen-Oscopy. These are a lot of fun.
Yep, that's right. It's the Coen-Oscopy today, the third film by Joel and Ethan Coen, Miller's Crossing. One of the, this is one of the favorites, right? I don't know. All of them are one of the favorites for somebody. There
is a certain brand of film geek that loves Miller's Crossing, that thinks this is just the bee's knees. It's like one of the best scripts ever written and the unsung gem of the Coens' filmography. That is a type of film geek that I do not associate with our friend Chris Prentice, who is here with us today. So I'm wondering, Chris, you had mentioned this one as one that you might want to do from the Coens. Well, what is it about this one that speaks to you? Is it just all Polito?
Well, that's a big part of it, no doubt about it. I mean, he's probably my favorite performer in this film. I kind of feel like this is kind of over time become more of a forgotten Coen Brothers film. Like it seems like, over the years they've amassed sort of, they're cult movies. Lebowski is obviously, people go to that movie dressed up like the characters, and that they've had other movies that have kind of lived on, whereas I don't know if Miller's Crossing gets the due that it's deserved. I think it did maybe back 20 years ago when it was only maybe a 10-year-old movie, but now as a 34-year-old movie, I feel like maybe it's in the largely somewhat forgotten pile for their films.
Well, I do feel like there's been a little bit of a reclamation of it over the last, maybe I'm rushing back 10, 12 years here, but well, you're right. Like the Coens kind of broke through a couple times in a couple different ways. It was like Fargo got them awards and critical recognition, and then Lebowski got them a cult following. And then it feels like after like No Country kind of re-broke them through and married those things a bit.
Over the top. Yeah.
They were no longer cult figures at that point.
This was kind of the first one that really built up a cult, I feel like. I don't know. I think Raising Arizona might have more of one now, but yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I believe this did kind of start off as almost, like a nascent cult object for the Coens, and it kind of got eclipsed by the bigger stuff they eventually did. I believe that's accurate, but there is still a contingent that loves this film. There is definitely they're older nerds who will tell you this is one of the best things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to someone who's a Coen Brothers fan who's maybe south of 40, I don't know if this one's getting brought up quite as much. If you're talking to ones who are north of 40, then it's definitely getting brought up.
If you're talking to somebody about their favorite Coen Brothers movies and they mention Miller's Crossing as a contender, that they have their Letterboxd profile is extensive.
Yes.
And mine is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And despite not actually being on Letterboxd, I still fit the profile just fine.
I think I'm the same way with that. I'm not on there, but yeah, I hear.
I might as well be.
Right.
Dude, I'm so into Letterboxd. I went into Letterboxd after it existed, and added my movie journal into it for the days, for the dates that occurred before the existence of Letterboxd. So it goes back much farther than the app itself.
Yeah. So this is one for us then.
Yeah. What is the I understand what Letterboxd is. I've been on it. I've seen it. So but what is the main benefit of it?
It's really great for an OCD personality. I'll tell you that much.
Okay. It's just to kind of keep fantastic
track. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You can make little lists. It's the best. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And one of the main benefits is then your wife doesn't have to hear 1,500 words about Miller's Crossing.
There you
Get
go.
there. After
there's
you
that.
watched it.
Mhm. Well, she did though.
She's a fine woman.
She hadn't seen it. She wanted to, and she liked it quite a bit. Thank you very
Oh,
much,
yeah,
because it's a
yeah.
good fucking movie for real.
yeah.
This is a real solid one here. Miller's Crossing, a Prohibition era gangster film, and yeah, the third film by the Coens. This is I had thought of this as one of the serious ones, but it's pretty funny too.
It is very
It's
funny.
it's a little harder to nail down. After we had Blood Simple is sort of as dead serious as they get
Mhm.
in its presentation. Raising Arizona is about as goofy as they get, and then this one kind of splits the difference. It's a little fish nor fowl in terms of the Coen brothers having their serious existential thrillers and their screwball throwback comedies.
I tend to like them more in terms of comedy when they're not specifically going for comedy. I think that, stuff like a movie like Fargo is going to make me laugh way more than Hail Caesar. And even Miller's Crossing is going to make me laugh more than Intolerable Cruelty. I think when they're really going for the laughs, it doesn't work quite as well. But when you have a movie like this that is, yes, it's a violent gangster film, it's still very funny, and I find myself cracking up a lot.
This is a funny movie, but it's not one that makes me laugh. It makes me like smirk and nod quite a bit.
There's laughing. I wouldn't call it a comedy. It's definitely a drama. A gangster film is the easiest.
When
way
Mike
to
Starr gets hit with the chair, I'm laughing. I'm
pretty good.
sorry. I just think that's hysterical to me.
Well, okay, let's go back to sort of its reception when it came out. I mean, it's just kind of a flop, but
Oh yeah,
I think what you were getting across is it almost seemed like it should have built up a cult. It maybe started to, but something retarded that development to a degree. And I wonder if there's a couple of things there. This came out in 1990, right?
yeah.
And I wonder if Dick Tracy hurt its reception in that it turned off people's like 1930s gangsters receptors a bit. And I also wonder if Pulp Fiction might have sort of pulled the rug out from under this a bit, in that is a very self-aware gangster movie that came out a little bit later as a huge phenomenon, but is a little more quote unquote realistic. I don't know that it actually is very realistic, but that's how it was presented at the time. It was, the whole thing on Pulp Fiction. It's gangsters talking about real things, in quotes, and having real conversations. This is gangsters having very unreal conversations.
Well, this is I thought of you when we were talking about Public Enemies and your distaste for the 1930s gangster picture. Al, I was wondering.
That doesn't apply to this, though.
Okay, because it's heightened, right? Because it's
Yes.
yeah. These are kind of, I don't want to say caricatures, but John Polito is like delivering the greatest Italian mobster caricature in cinema here. So they kind of are.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like in the era where Bob Hoskins was still playing Mario, John Polito would have been a perfect Wario in live action.
See, I was going to go with how great of a tragedy is it that we did not get around in the 90s a live action Jetsons movie with John Polito as Mr. Spacely. That's what I want.
My memories of the Jetsons are very vague, but they're just good enough to know that that's perfect.
Oh,
That's
man,
like almost worth the indignity of having a Jetsons movie.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure it would have been horrendous, but I think he would have been absolutely fantastic. Like, how did the Flintstones' success not lead to a live action Jetsons? It doesn't compute now that I think about it.
You could have thrown Polito into the Flintstones, and that would have helped. He's wonderful, right? He's just extraordinary in this, and it seems like hire this guy for everything. This is a great guy to get.
So what I was going to ask regarding John Polito is there anybody with that kind of energy working today?
Huh.
I was trying to think while watching this again, and they just don't have people like him in movies anymore.
I mean, The Sopranos is full of them. There's plenty of Sopranos actors that have that kind of thing. I don't know who of them is still like regularly showing up in movies. Vincent Pastore.
Yeah, I don't see him very much, and I don't even think he's really like the high strung type of activity that you get from Polito. I just don't. I mean, I know like what Paul Walter Hauser's kind of the husky actor of our current times, but even he, I don't know if he's quite similar to Polito. Polito is just a special kind of maniac, and humorously so. And I don't know. I was just trying to think of who is like that today, and I was stumped.
Well, he did play Danny DeVito's long lost brother on the worst episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's not his fault. They did not serve him well there.
He's always good. This is a guy who always worked for sure.
Yeah.
I would say this movie launched two kind of Coen Brothers stable character actors here. Him and Turturro, will pop up throughout the rest of their the filmography pretty regularly. But unlike Turturro, I think this is like easily the best role that John Polito ever got. Like, the signature John Polito role. The M. Emmett Walsh and Blood Simple of this film is definitely John Polito as Johnny Casper here. Never been a role that suited his particular talents better.
Oh, sure. I mean, I guess that there's something there that if you can get a villain role in a Coen Brothers movie, it tends to be pretty juicy and mushy. I mean, worked for Javier Bardem as well.
I mean, he really has a bigger part in this than Albert Finney. I mean, there's more Polito than Finney in this movie. That was something that kind of I didn't really recall. Seeing this again is like Polito's. He's a bigger force in this, and Finney's very good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he's got kind of the money scene of the whole movie, but in terms of just the entire picture, Polito is a bigger presence in this.
He's in it throughout, yeah, and I mean the movie has the faith in his performance, in what he's going to do to open the film with a 5-minute monologue from John Polito, just camera pointed at him and just going, ethics. He has an entire this is who I. It's like the beginning of The Godfather, starring John Polito. It's and he nails it, and you're immediately aware, like, oh, this guy's kicking ass right away. He's a ball to watch, and he's just a funny guy. I mean, it really does come down to what a fucking character this guy is. Look at the sound of his voice. He looks like he was he looks like a drawing. He looks like a cartoon character sprung to life. That the pencil thin mustache, the sort of the spark plug size, the chrome top. He's amazing. Great presence.
Have you guys seen floating out on the internet is the original script for this that includes some casting suggestions, like at the cover page?
Oh, no.
I have not. I'd love to hear that. No, I have not.
The ones that for Casper that are striking it's a couple names I don't recognize, and then Michael Gambon and Joe Mantegna. And you can certainly picture a world in which Joe Mantegna plays Johnny Casper, but how different are those movies? Like this, it feels like casting Polito. I don't know if that's the thing, but it is, or a result of them unlocking just how much of a cartoon this movie is going to be. Because in a way that maybe the script itself does not make clear.
I think Mantegna can play a cartoon character. I think he
plays Fat Tony on The Simpsons.
Exactly.
So,
he could do Fat Tony here, and it would similarly function. I can see Mantegna doing it in another way. John Polito cannot.
But Fat Tony does not have nearly as much like Yosemite Sam in it. It's like that's a Simpsons cartoon, not a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why Polito is a very specific actor. I think he has less range than Mantegna, but he defines this film immediately in those opening minutes, and in a way that is accurate.
Mantegna kind of plays a very similar character in Godfather 3. It's another kind of it's a gangster who is trying to take over but doesn't really have the respect of everybody. It's not really as comedic as Johnny Casper, but I mean it's a very similar type of role. So I think Mantegna would have been good. It just it would have been good, but I just think Polito, it's just magnificent here, and he really, I mean, I like him in a lot of stuff, but he's actually my favorite character in this movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's the question. Like, is this the MVP of this? It's like a all no holds barred grudge match between Polito and Turturro, I think. But character wise, I actually kind of like Johnny Casper.
Oh, me too.
It's impossible to like Bernie. Yeah.
No. Oh, I like him way more than Bernie.
Yeah.
It is an incredible line this movie manages to walk. And that you're right. Casper is the most likable in some ways of this of anybody in this, and is, when we're talking about ethics, he is sort of like playing things straighter. He is a more honest gangster than the quote unquote good guys. And for all of that, it never tips over to the point where you're rooting for Casper to win.
No.
You're okay with Leo winning and Tom, and yet he is the most fun to watch by such a wide margin that you enjoy spending time with him. You kind of like him, even as you're also just totally okay with his downfall.
Yeah. And they actually put like a lot of sort of the philosophical ideas of the film in his dialogue, in his mouth. There's like probably half a dozen things he say that could serve as the sort of the moral of the film. I wrote some of these down. One's like, you double cross once, where does it end? An interesting ethical question. Like he's actually quite well spoken and verbose. I mean, everyone is in this, but him kind of especially. It's
everybody
really,
except maybe the Dane is the only person who's not particularly erudite.
but more than you'd expect, maybe. I mean, this is kind of carryover from Raising Arizona. They can't help but make everyone interesting in the things they say. Yeah,
well, it's interesting what you say there about what the moral of this story is, the philosophy of this movie. This is one of the difficult ones for me to talk about in this way. I think that it's not just like this movie has a very complicated plot.
It does. Yeah.
When we're talking about themes and philosophy and whatever, I find this one to be one of the harder ones to parse. Like, what's actually going on here? Like, there are movies later on, your No Country's or A Serious Man type of movies that are dealing with very difficult philosophical concepts. But I can sketch out for you fairly clearly, like, the things that it's getting at. What it's, maybe it's making a point not to draw any conclusions, too firm of conclusions, but what its basic philosophical quandaries are. And this, I mean, I don't know that I would be able to parse this very well at all if the opening of the movie was not such a direct monologue, as direct as the movie gets, that's like name checking concepts specifically about ethics and friendship and character. But those are also such big words that, like, what does this movie actually say about any of those things? It's harder to parse. Ethics, for example. This is a world where everybody's corrupt, everybody's violent, and yet the ethics of these gangsters is totally divorced from the violence. Tom gets the shit kicked out of him 6 or 7 times in this movie, but doesn't take that personally at any point. That's not. It's not shooting people or I mean, except when it is. Like, Bernie killing Mink is a highly unethical act, but mainly because it's so duplicitous.
Yeah, well, that's Bernie. Like, I mean, there is a basement in characters' ethics here, and it lives in Bernie. Yes. He's the worst one. So everyone kind of exists on the spectrum from him. And I mean, I think you could, like, structurally say it's about a guy losing his heart. It's about, or his soul, however you want to phrase it. That doesn't really follow or read to me. I think that.
It could just as easily be about him finding his heart. They're saying that he doesn't, like Vern is saying over and over throughout, that he doesn't have one. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, I mean, that's like, God, you know what? I told you the thing I'd wanted to avoid today was talking about the ending 10 minutes into the movie. But it is almost, there's an aspect of this movie. It's based on vaguely on a Dashiell Hammett novel that is very much a Yojimbo setup.
It's
the guy playing the two warring sides against each other. Right. And it almost seems like they approach this story by figuring out that, well, what's the biggest twist we could put on a Yojimbo story? What if we figured out at the end, actually, the Yojimbo character actually his loyalties do lie with one side ultimately, and he will put one side's interest above his own, and maybe that's the twist on it.
Well, this kind of gets into, I guess, what I would have to say is my reservation with Miller's Crossing. There is one thing I think about this film that kind of does not really work for me, and it's sort of a crucial thing, and that is Gabriel Byrne as Tom Regan. It's not that I think he's bad. I think he's actually doing exactly what is intended. I just think that the read on this character is kind of all wrong. In that he is, he's the Yojimbo figure. He's the guy who's working both sides. He's the guy that the movie does. Ultimately, it works as a reveal that yes, his loyalties are with Leo, and the reason he's doing the things he does is because he respects Leo so much and feels like he owes him. Talking about the end, and but that is obscured from the audience until the end. It is a reveal. I think that's entirely wrong way to go about it. I think.
Well, it depends what they're actually getting at, which is hard to say.
So
Sure.
What is it about Byrne specifically that you don't really like in the movie? Like, is there anything that he's doing, or just the whole way the character is written and what happens, or is it a Gabriel Byrne problem because of him?
Well, I think they cast him to do that. Like that.
Okay.
That's what you get from Gabriel Byrne, and that's how he's directed. I think it's the wrong take on the character. I think this character feels like he needs to be the exact opposite to me, like an incredibly empathetic figure, like a Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition was the version of this character that I think that maybe open this film up in a way. I'm not saying it needs to be straight up Jimmy Stewart here, but a guy who we're kind of like we're not having trouble reading scene to scene.
No, I think that actually is the key to the character. Is that I think he is supposed to be a cold fish.
Yes, and I think that's the problem. I think that's the issue with him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe I wonder if Gabriel Byrne splits the difference too much. That he's not a totally inscrutable cold fish who reveals his wounded heart at the very end to us, but he's also not so empathetic that we're just with him automatically like a Tom Hanks guy would be. I also wonder if just like it's a mistake to letting him use his Irish accent is too much of a mistake, because it makes it harder to believe that he's actually going to go over to the Italians and wipe out the Irish side.
I never believe that's going to happen. I got to say, I never believe. I mean,
Yeah.
there's almost no reason to like this guy until he saves Bernie, to be honest. Like he's less empathetic than Casper or Leo. I mean, Verna at least kind of acknowledges that she sucks in a way.
Well, he acknowledges that she sucks too, but in a misogynistic kind of way. But I think the reason to like him before that is just that tends to be the smartest guy in every room he's in. I mean,
that's true. He is also the guy who is generally advocating for confrontation. He's
advocating to avoid it.
I think he's always trying to make sure there isn't that. I mean, that he's trying to steer Leo away from anything like that.
I guess so. That's actually, yeah. But he is the guy who's like, you ought to dump that girl, and you ought to kill Bernie. It's just these. And I guess when you actually think that through, he's actually trying to stop things from getting worse. That's true.
Also trying to like purge his own guilt of having carried on the affair with Verna.
Mm-hmm.
That it getting rid of both burn bombs would also rid him of his own feelings of guilt for turning against Leo.
And to be clear, this character works. Like this tracks. I understand what he's doing and why, and I believe in him. I kind of just don't have any sort of transference with him as the main character. Like I kind of don't care what happens to Tom Regan ultimately.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, this is almost like the curse of Gabriel Byrne, because it's like the same thing kind of happens to him here that happens in The Usual Suspects. It's like he's the star of The Usual Suspects, but who really walks away from The Usual Suspects going, "Wow, Gabriel Byrne! I mean, what a performance!" I mean, it's kind of the same. I mean, I think he's really good here. This is one of my favorite performances from him, but in a movie with all these kind of over the top characters, he kind of has to be the guy who plays it very cool, plays it very on the down low, and that's just not the very attractive part in a gangster movie.
Can I read you guys the casting suggestions for Tom Regan?
Oh,
Sure.
I'm very curious.
Willem Dafoe,
Ooh.
Andy Garcia, Elias Koteas,
Ooh.
real head scratcher Dylan McDermott,
Yeah, okay.
and I think they're just like baiting Chris here, but Tom Sizemore.
Oh yeah,
That one took me aback
yeah.
because I'm like, what had Tom Sizemore even been in 1990? How do they know?
He was around, but
he was just kind of on the cusp.
he wouldn't get this role.
No. I mean, he was that same year. He was the guy that gets blown away by Jamie Lee Curtis in Blue Steel. That was he was just starting out at this point. But man, I would have loved.
I can see that though. I can see him working. Yeah.
Yes.
He was very good in the 90s.
Yeah, he was. I can see Defoe working for the colder version of the character, and maybe Elias Koteas working as the more empathetic version.
I kind of love Elias Koteas. I think that's incredible, actually. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see the Defoe version too. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't think that Byrne is a problem here, and I mean, I think the way the character is handled, and that's just my opinion. But it's sort of a barrier to me. And this is a tough one, I think. This is a dense film with a lot of information that is doled out. It took me I think 3 times to kind of even really grapple with this. And if you ask me to explain how exactly the boxing scam works, I could not probably tell you right now. It makes sense when I'm watching the movie, but the
part that confuses me about it is, so Casper's complaining about how he fixes a fight. Sure. And then he bets with Bernie, because I guess Bernie is a bookie or works for the bookies thing. And then Bernie turns around and says he knows when Casper bets on a fight, he only does that if it's fixed. So then he tells other people, and then other people bet on the underdog, and that screws up the odds. But Casper's bet should already be locked in. That's everything I understand about sports gambling.
Yep. That's exactly how I get where I don't get it either. Is once Casper makes his bet, the odds shouldn't be changing for him.
He
should be getting in on the ground floor. It's everyone else betting afterwards that should be getting all the screwed up odds. So I don't understand, and I'm someone who loves to bet on sporting events, and so that's the thing I didn't quite understand either about the whole setup. Is I don't know why Casper's odds would have been screwed up.
I mean, maybe, Prohibition era mob outfit bookmakers operated differently than like a current modern day Vegas sports book.
I suppose.
But it still seems like once you give them your money, the odds, the bet should not be changing after the fact.
This is the sort of thing that the Coen brothers do not want you to get bogged down in or pay attention to.
No, it's true. Yeah.
It does not matter.
Yeah.
No.
And that's a problem a little bit in this film. It's just so much information. It's just so much to hold on to. I mean, like the gay subplot of this, that's handled so casually. It's not subtext. It's definitely text, but it took me a few times to even realize it was present in the film. There's a lot of stuff like that just because there's so much information and character been thrown at you. I mean, the Coens have a bit of a reputation of being like you kind of have to see the movies a few times to really know how you feel about them, how they work. I don't think that's entirely true. It's kind of very true about Miller's Crossing, though. Yeah. This is one you got to see a few times to truly grasp, I believe. Yeah, and even still, I'm not sure I totally get it all.
The movie is in some ways about two love triangles. There's the one between Tom and Leo and Verna, and then there's this other one on the periphery that is Eddie the Dane and Bernie Mink. and Mink, who's played by Steve Buscemi. And that one is hard. One, because it's a little bit because it's a gay triangle and that people are talking around it using euphemisms, but they're talking about it pretty directly. It's more that those are 3 characters. One of them we only meet once for one scene. And at no point do we ever see 2 of those 3 points of that triangle share a scene together.
Yeah.
So we're piecing it together kind of secondhand.
Well, yeah, the fact that Steve Buscemi's character only really has one scene like that. I feel like that really needs to be a much bigger character, because they're alluding to him so much and so often later on, that it's like, oh right, he was Minx. So at least on the first viewing, yeah, I really did not know what the hell was going on with his character, because it's just one scene, and it's such a big part of the movie, but it did not resonate with me at all, that first viewing.
Lots of Tom's scheming and like his inception of ideas into Johnny Casper's head about the Dane's loyalty and everything pivots on the Dane's relationship with Mink, again, which is a thing they never openly acknowledge, or those characters never do. And also, I mean, the scene with Mink is hard to parse, because the way they've characterized him is that he talks way too fast and you can't hardly understand him.
Yeah, it's Steve Buscemi in one scene talking super fast in 1930s gangster patois in like a crowded room as they're walking across it, and you're just kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Okay, well, it's Steve Buscemi. He's funny. Turns out that's an important scene, and you have to understand that character and remember who he is, and you will never see him again.
Yes, and then you'll see his dead body later on, because he'll be questioned. But also, he turns out to be the solution to like the red herring killing of Rug Daniels. Is that he's the one who killed him?
You're right.
Which almost doesn't matter by the time we get to the ending, but is a big open question throughout the movie. Have you guys heard the Buscemi tell the story of being cast in this?
No.
He says that he auditioned for the Coen brothers, and their like only note for him was just read it as fast as you can. And so he was like practicing. He's going, blah, 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 and Tommy's a good guy. Why would you want to help him? He's a birdie. He's a good, smart, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, okay, yeah, good job. And they sent him away, and he didn't hear anything for a little while. And then they asked him to come in and read it again. And he came in and read it again. And he said afterwards, one of the brothers, Joel or Ethan, just kind of shrugged and said, well, you still said it the fastest of anybody. So I guess you got the part.
Well, he's great in it. I mean, and this is him too, right? Not just Turturro and Polito. It's another guy right there, Buscemi, joining the stable.
Yeah, it's just one scene, but he makes an impression. But even with that impression, it's like on first viewing, I don't really think I got exactly how big his character was to the overall scheme of the movie.
Yeah, it's a dense film. Yeah, more than most. And yeah, I mean, it is very entertaining, and it's incredibly well made, well shot film. We'll talk about Barry Sonnenfeld actually, but like, so it goes down easy, but yeah, it takes a few times to really grasp what it's putting down.
Yeah, honestly, so there's a thing here. The first time you're watching this movie, I say you. The first time I'm watching this movie, I'm confused enough by the plot that I don't know I followed every twist and turn the first time I saw this. And we get to the end, the sort of like said final twist is, oh no, Tom actually was loyal to Leo the whole time. And yeah, I think we like kind of accept that so much as the true north for this character now that we've known about it for so long. But the character's introduced betraying him.
Oh yeah,
with his girlfriend / fiance. So that's not really apparent the first time. And then we watch through a second time with kind of, or I say you again. When I watched through a second time, it was kind of the idea of, oh no, this is all these plans within plans. Everything's going according to Tom's plan. He's Kaiser Sozeing this, to use the usual suspects term. And then it's not till like the third time when it was actually, he is being loyal to Leo the whole way through, other than the Verna thing. Just kicks it off, but it's also he's improvising a lot. Like there is not this did not all play out according to his grand design. He's not Hannibal Lecter, but he's actually out of control. He's the smartest character. He's the one who sees all the angles, as everybody says, and he's got plans. But also, they're not going well a lot of the time in this movie, or they're being revised constantly. And what you that is obvious now when I watch it, or it's clear. But it took several times to get oriented enough for that to be the case.
Well, he's kind of doing chess matches with the Dane and with Bernie throughout, and he's kind of trying to make that. He's pretty much dominating a game of checkers with Johnny Casper, but with the other two, he's kind of got it's a little bit more like it all kind of has to work out together, and it could go wrong at any time. And I don't know. I feel like being on the outside of Tom Regan a little bit maybe makes this a little less tense of a film than it could be. Maybe.
Yeah, and yet, okay, maybe this is the other thing, that the bizarre tone of this movie makes it harder to parse. And maybe that hurt its reception a little bit. But also, it's just like how cartoony this movie is at odds with how intense the scenes at Miller's Crossing are.
Yeah.
They are real and dangerous in a way that otherwise, there's Tommy gun battles that are Looney Tune shit throughout the rest of this. But once they're out there being walked out into the woods, the danger is very real and the emotions are very raw.
Yeah, it probably shouldn't work as well as it does, to be perfectly honest. I think these are just guys who have master of tone and control of the performances they're putting on screen. Yeah, I mean, I'm not actually sure. I don't know. That said, I don't think this is like an overwhelming and emotional experience as a film. It's kind of a funny thriller, maybe in the 90s. I think, like you said, this comes out right around Dick Tracy. Maybe we kind of digest these things a little bit differently at that moment. Untouchables was a few years before. That's a pretty cartoony movie as well. So maybe it's just kind of the 1930s milieu that allows for that. Yeah,
because to me, I remember when this movie came out. I was very young, but I do remember when it came out, and I don't think they marketed it very well, because in my head at the time it came out, it just kind of seemed like, oh, that's the movie where people walk through the woods. That's what that movie's about. It's a movie about people who walk in the woods and something bad happens. And it's like, I almost felt like, oh, it was like a River's Edge in the 30s or something. That's kind of how in my head back then I felt like the movie was about. So I didn't see it until probably a good 7 or 8 years after it had already been out, and I was like, "Oh no, okay, there's way more to this than just people walking through the woods."
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of in a lot of ways just a proper like 1930s gangster movie.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like the Yojimbo stuff it's very much present. Like, it's not structurally a remake of Yojimbo at all, but it's definitely heavily inspired by it. My wife watching it with me, she's like, "Oh, so this is like the movie that Kevin watches in Home Alone," and I was like, "Yeah, pretty much."
A little bit.
Well, that's a question that I wanted to ask: is this the best Irish mob movie ever?
Oh, I mean, it's so weird. Like, this is, I can't argue with you guys when you say this is a gangster movie, obviously, but I don't know if it's the era or the comic tone, but I don't think of it as a gangster movie in the line of The Godfather and Goodfellas and The Departed and State of Grace maybe as an Irish mob movie.
The Craze, maybe.
It's closer to Raising Arizona than Goodfellas to me.
Well, I
don't know. I think Goodfellas and Raising Arizona have a lot of shared DNA as well. Actually.
Really?
I mean, Goodfellas there's a lot of laughs in Goodfellas to me. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to crack up over in Goodfellas, and I mean,
but it takes place more or less in the real world.
Yes, it does.
Sure, sure. Yeah, to me, it's like, how many truly great Irish mob movies have there been? I mean, obviously, The Departed is kind of like this. Oh, that's the big, probably, the number one contender. It would probably be The Departed, but I feel like this one is a lot better than anything else you're going to come up with. It's a hell of a lot better than Black Mass. I mean, So it's like there really haven't been a whole lot of great Irish mob movies. That's kind of what I guess is my takeaway is, there was, I think there's a really good one that
State of Grace came out in 1990.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and
With
State of
Miller's
Grace is
Crossing.
good. Also has Turturro in it, and it's a good movie. It's very good. I like that film. I think Miller's Crossing is a lot better, but I do like State of Grace. There, one that it's hard to really call it so much a. It's not really a drama. It's more of an action movie that involves the Irish mob. But I really like Run All Night from with Liam Neeson from about 10 years ago. That's
It's not in competition with Miller's Crossing, though.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just trying to
yeah.
say that I think it's a good movie that involves the Irish mob.
But I think you hit on the distinction there. There's movies that are about the Irish mob, and then there's movies where the Irish mob is the villains.
I'm just trying.
Much like
to say,
there's movies where the mafia is the villain, but the Jerky Boys movie is not an Italian mafia movie.
Yeah, I think there's the Irish mob is prevalent in Boondock Saints, but I'm not going to list that as one of the great Irish mob movies of all time.
No, one of the great Russian mob movies, of course. Yes,
sure.
It's right up there with Eastern Promise.
The one I thought of was Last Man Standing, which is it's Yojimbo with the Irish and Italian mafia. in the 30s. That's similar, and the most similar in many ways. It's nowhere near as good a movie as Miller's Crossing, but it's
quite good,
a similar one. Yeah, it's fun. It's Walter Hill. It's Bruce Willis. It's okay. It's the least of the Yojimbo remakes, I would say.
I mean, there's Gangs of New York. Which,
that's a whole different.
You're a different era. There's no guns.
It is an Irish gangster movie. I mean,
look, I'm fine calling Miller's Crossing the best Irish gangster film. Albert Finney as Leo, listening to Danny Boy, that scene alone is enough.
Oh yeah,
to say
I'm definitely fine with giving him best Irish gangster.
It's pretty great.
Oh yeah, that is one of the great. That's a scene where you're like, God, I wish the Coen brothers would just have made a straight up action movie. Because when they do it so well. And boy, that sequence is unreal. I mean, that's one of my favorites, not just of the 90s, but just action scenes, period. I love that sequence.
So good. Maybe that's a way to talk about the thing that I find most difficult about this movie to articulate on a podcast anyway, as trying to figure out what this movie is all about. And I think that what I've been circling around here is that the world is so artificial that I think because of that, I want the structures of symbolism within the movie to be tighter and more ironclad. I want what hats mean throughout this movie to be really super consistent. And one of the things that it's a factor in this movie, but it's not that ironclad, is Tom is the brains of the operation and Leo's the heart, right? And you have on one side, Bernie is the dark reflection of Tom. What if Tom really was all brains and absolutely no heart, no conscience whatsoever? He would look like Bernie. And then
Bernie's not that smart.
But the flip side of that is Leo is kind of what Tom would be if he was all heart and no head. Except that when you're watching this Tommy gun scene with Leo, he demonstrates some smarts there. He's fairly clever in how he operates on things. And there is something to the cartoon logic of it too, of that famously the Tommy gun that shoots about 850 bullets in a single clip.
Yeah.
That it almost feels like if that were Tom firing that gun, he would have to reload. But because it's Leo and he is a figure of just pure heart, it keeps firing as long as he's still angry.
Right.
I love all that shit. I love all that. You're right. It's not totally threaded, but when it does show up, you can kind of see the great, that sequence. Yeah, that sequence. I love how you've explicated that there. It's an incredible piece of filmmaking for many reasons, not just the nuts and bolts of it and the shot selection and stuff, but just how when it appears in the film a lot earlier than you'd expect.
Yeah,
what it does for Leo as a character, who is kind of you think he's a bit of a bit soft at that point. Yeah. Actually, he comes off as a money man, and it would make sense structurally for that character to die then, in a film, and that's not what happens. He ends up being like incredibly strong there. And you're like,
that's another thing that you forget the fourth or fifth time through is how tense that scene starts out the first time you're watching this movie.
Right.
But now once you've seen it once, you know that it becomes a Looney Tunes cartoon. You kind of miss that. But yeah, at first you think, oh man, is this it for him? But yeah, that Leo you're right about what it does for his character, because he would be a total sap otherwise.
Yep.
It's just being led around by Tom, and like we would be losing all respect for him at this point in the movie if we're like, oh no, this guy's for real.
He's getting
maybe
by his friend.
The most badass sequence involving a character in his pajamas. I don't know if we've had one as good as that. I mean, that is just a showstopper right there. And the fact that it's so early is, I mean, to me, what confidence that the Coen brothers show in having such an awesome sequence so early, because there really isn't, in terms of action, there really isn't anything to that level in the rest of the film.
No, there's some good stuff, The scene when Leo beats him up and then knocks him down the hall, and that's a good action scene technically.
Yeah, and
but it's also kind of a farce,
the shoveling of the Dane, the shovel assault is also great. It's very violent. There's that pretty cool sequence where the cops just shoot up that one club, and you have the Sam Raimi appearance, and and then the police have the Browning machine gun, and they're just basically destroying the whole thing. That's pretty good too, but not quite to that level of the Danny Boy sequence.
But that is played like totally for laughs, I feel like.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is.
The guy comes out literally waving a white handkerchief, and Sam Raimi just shoots him and laughs with his buddies before he gets blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is the thing, like, you talk about Tom getting beat up by Finney, and that's another thing that's a motif that Tom's constantly getting the shit beat out of him in this movie. But he himself never throws a punch.
Well,
except for the chair. Yeah. They kind of like, and it's like, do they sell out this concept of the character being the all brains and no brawn or no heart for the sake of this gag that's a good gag? It's even better when Mike Starr goes out to like go get the real like heavy, and it's the little old guy. It's like a foot shorter than Byrne, but it's like, oh, now you're in trouble. You got Tic Tac.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that I think you're right. It's a little thematically muddled, I suppose. I kind of don't care, because it all works. Like the character stuff works. Like I believe he would pick up the chair at that point,
Oh yeah.
And it is entertaining as a caper for sure. A Yojimbo style, playing things against each other, little fingering it, and coming up with the desired resolution, which is surprising. All that works so well that I don't get hung up on that, I think.
Yeah, and I am talking out both sides of my mouth on this, because it is a thing that more generally I don't necessarily like movies or fiction to be that neatly solvable. Yeah. In their thematics. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I overall, like, I give the Coen brothers a lot of credit for. The thing I laid out there when we talked about Blood Simple was my idea of what their driving like thematic concern is, and it's about like the limits of perception and how nobody ever sees the whole board, and how that leads to all their problems, and how actually even when you do, it doesn't necessarily do you that much good. And that stuff is in here. I don't know what the conclusion is on it, but it is like built into the story in certain ways that Tom is the player who sees all the angles. Everybody agrees on that. They say it to his face, and it doesn't avail him that much in the end. He doesn't profit that much from it. I mean, the opening where Casper's lamenting about how if you can't trust a fix, what can you trust? He's offended that he fixed this fight. He knows the secret plumbing of that universe, to use the Blood Simple parlance. And it isn't profiting him as much as he feels it should. So you can put that stuff in there. I mean, it's actually, there's looking at this movie through that lens. Some of the filmmaking choices, cinematography, I mean, is more interesting. There's a lot of playing with like limited perspectives and shots. Sure, like or when Leo comes to Tom's door at 4:00 in the morning, and they have this whole conversation about Vern and how he can't find her, and he's worried. And it's only after he leaves that we find out. They let us into the next room, and they find out that Vern is actually in the bedroom the whole time.
What a scene! Yeah,
or the way, Tom comes home after having beat up with the phone's ringing, and he knows that somebody doesn't want to talk to. He comes in, sits down, takes off his hat, answers the phone, says, yeah, come break my legs if you have to, hangs it up, and then says, hey there, Bernie. And we get like reverse shot. Oh, Bernie was sitting here in this chair the whole time. And the perspective the camera gave us did not show us the whole thing. Tom knew the whole time.
Yeah.
But we did not. And so there's like stuff like that's in here. And maybe that's like the most interesting way of looking at Tom's character. He's somebody who sees all the angles, understands exactly what everybody should be doing and why everybody's doing what they're doing, with the one exception of he doesn't know why he's doing the things he's doing until the end. He can't decide what his motivation is, even though he knows what to do.
His ability and his intelligence allows him to achieve all his goals. Like, he does everything he sets out to do, in a roundabout way sometimes, but he always gets there. But yeah, he doesn't quite give a sense of why. And I think he doesn't know that either. I don't know. This
most
goes to my
basic terms.
Tom Regan thing.
He's asking himself: am I doing this because I'm in love with Werner or because I'm in love with Leo?
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. Another thing. Another comment from my wife was she said, "Make sure you mention this. Thruple solves all the issues in this film." Like, if they just,
it seems like Leo would be open to it.
Leo would be open to it. And Tom loves Leo for sure. Ava's, Verna's into both of them. So, yeah, I think if they, it's a world accepting of homosexuality, and despite being the 1930s.
Yeah, but
thruple solves all rows.
But you could almost say that a thruple with Dane, Bernie, and Mink, that might have solved everything.
I don't think the Dane would be into it, but who can say?
If we're throwing that concept out there, I think
But I think the problem I think Bernie is the problem with whether it's a couple or a throuple. You can't have a relationship with Bernie.
You do not want Bernie in your throuple. No. Absolutely.
I guess not. But I'm saying if we're going down that road of a throuple just solves everything, then that might have been the one that could have solved everything, and that might have had a way less death and murder if those three chaps could have just gotten along.
But most of those murders are so entertaining.
Well, that's true. Yes,
a lot of them. It's a lot of fun. Maybe we should talk about. We haven't talked about the burn bombs here.
Yeah, it's got to.
I have some thoughts about Marcia Gay Harden that are kind of on lines what you said about Gabriel Byrne. I don't think she's bad in this movie, and I don't think she's really good in it either.
I think she's pretty good.
It's a difficult role.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
It's a thankless part.
I don't want to lay it all at her feet because I think it is kind of. There's some crackerjack lines if you consider that thanks. Deliver. I love the bit where they're talking about Rug Daniels and Byrne describes him as not a bad guy if looks, brains, and personality don't count. And she goes, "You better hope they don't." Like, that's just great, I don't know, screwball dialogue. And she gets to get out some of those lines, but overall, it's like, what is this character exactly? How sympathetic are we supposed to be to her? How sympathetic should she be playing it? Those are tough questions that I'm not sure the movie settles on entirely.
She's doing 1930s bombshell femme fatale, which, I was very surprised to find was in Marcia Gay Harden's repertoire, especially as well as it comes across in this. This is her film debut. It's not representative of the kind of actress she would become, I think.
No.
But man, I like her.
Is femme fatale what the Verna character is, though?
It's sort of an archetype, but no, it's not exactly. It more so than like Frances McDormand in Blood Simple, but she's definitely playing people against each other a little bit.
Yeah, she's a very benign version of it.
Yeah,
that she's not trying to hurt Leo.
No, she's just trying to protect her brother. Yeah,
it's the dame in a gangster picture. It's like I feel like there's only so much you're going to be able to get out of that kind of a character, and I think she's fine. She does it about as well as I think you could be asked of. Yeah, it's a Coen Brothers gangster picture, but it's still a gangster picture, and there's only so much you're going to really get from that kind of a character.
What's interesting to me is I think she almost is in the femme fatale mold, except maybe the Tom Regan character is so far from the film noir like sap that would be played by that character that she almost becomes something else entirely, or like isn't even like putting in the effort to be that to him. Maybe if we were watching more from Leo's perspective, she would come off a little more like a traditional femme fatale.
That's, I think, correct. And the fact that she's, I mean, in a way, Tom fills the same role, in that relationship.
He's the femme fatale.
A little, like, I mean, we're a couple of heels, Tom. Yes, we are. Like they kind of, I think that's what appeals to them about each other. Like that's their connection, is that they both kind of have a deception to them, a darkness to them. And I think that's what they're both attracted to Leo so much, is that he doesn't have that.
No, not at all.
Like I said, the character stuff works for me here. All that stuff really plays. Is it all the best choice though, narratively? I don't know.
But scene by scene, the dialogue writing is so sharp. I mean, it's not even the dialogue. Maybe it's not even calling it sharp isn't even the right word. It is so artificial. It's Baroque almost, but it's so much fun. It is.
Yeah.
The actors get to chew on it.
It's a patois. I mean, this is like, heightened dialogue is sort of a hallmark of this genre. It's the stuff you were complaining about in Public Enemies, except they're leaning into it here. They're not trying to be the real world version of it. They're enjoying the musicality of, well, you got to give me the hi-hat. What's the rumpus? All that stuff coming out of people's, there's joy in that.
I think you're mischaracterizing my gripe with Public Enemies a touch. I don't know that I came after the patois there. My gripe specifically was that for Michael Mann movies are very much based around efficiency porn. Mm-hmm. And you can't do efficiency porn in the 1930s because it was a time frame when we had all like the modern things, but they were so new that everybody sucked at them. Everybody sucked at everything. That doesn't apply to this movie because it takes place in a cartoon 1930s.
Right. Of course. I mean, yeah, I think this is obviously the more successful film, but I think that part of that is just that it's leaning into gangster pictures. It's doing the stuff they love about these, and I think the Coens very much enjoy 1930s gangster pictures. That's the sense I get, at least.
It's like, in order to make a movie like this, where you're kind of breaking a lot of those conventions, you have to like it. You can't dislike that style of movies and then say, okay, I'm going to make the even better one. You have to have a fondness for it. It kind of reminds me.
You can't come at parody from a place of contempt.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the Mel Brooks thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. It's like, it kind of reminds me of something Norm Macdonald said about doing impressions. The best impressions, you have to kind of like the person in order to do an impression of them. If you have just utter contempt, it doesn't work as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why Norm, Burt Reynolds and Larry King were his best. Yeah, he loved those guys.
Tarantino, Letterman, all that kind of. I mean, he genuinely likes those guys. So those impressions, and like you said, Larry King. So I feel like we're getting the same thing here with Miller's Crossing. Is they genuinely like those 30s, Warner Brothers, Jimmy Cagney type of movies, but it's like, okay, we like those, but here's our spin on it, and we're going to do it just as well. It's just going to be our spin, and you have to, but obviously they really have an appreciation for those movies.
And when I'm watching this, I kind of do too. I'm enjoying the things that they're reminding me of and pulling out. It's fun. It's just fun.
Oh, for
to
sure.
See it through their eyes. I like this more than like a Jimmy Cagney film, honestly.
Oh, yes. I agree.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a knock on Jimmy Cagney movies to say like that is just a totally different speed. I don't enjoy those stuff like those 30s movies for their own sake. Like they're interesting cultural artifacts.
I like White Heat.
I'm not just firing them up.
White Heat's fun. Yeah,
that's really
okay. But I'm not gonna flip past White Heat on HBO 2 on a Saturday afternoon and get sucked into it the way I will into Miller's Crossing, just because scene by scene this is so entertaining to me.
Right.
None of those, other than TCM, nobody's going to be playing White Heat in 2024, and I don't even know if TCM would be playing it anymore, to be honest. But it's just it's gone.
My reference points for where you find movies are just as dated as James Cagney tropes now. But look, I think we've been going for quite a while here, but we haven't talked.
It's Turturro time. Is it?
Yeah, it's got to be Turturro time. Okay. And I think this is the thing that's I mentioned a couple of times here is how the big showcase scene at Miller's Crossing, again, all three of the movies we looked at have had these sort of like big midpoint sequence scenes that are like almost dialogueless. This one has the Danny Boy sequence and the Miller's Crossing sequence, which it is dialogue free because Turturro's monologuing, but our hero, who it's like we're learning so much about in the sequence, is not saying a word. But that scene is so raw. It's so emotional. It's at such odds with how artificial the rest of the world is, where that the police are breaking out that mounted machine gun to shoot up a speakeasy, and that Burns just sauntering up to the chief of police with a drink in his hand, and the chief saying, "I'm just the chief, so don't tell me nothing if you don't feel like it." But
you gonna kill Bernie or what? I love that.
It's all so heightened, and then here it's like so real. And Turturro's, I mean, it's an incredible performance. I also have watched the initial Siskel and Ebert review of this not too long ago on YouTube.
I did watch this.
I watched that.
Yeah. We all watched that. Okay, yeah. And Ebert did not like it. And I think what tripped him up was this sequence.
Ebert talked Raising Arizona too. Yeah.
He basically says that he recommends it, but then he goes on to say all the stuff that he hates about it. And he basically ends up just badgering Gene over it. Like, well, can you explain this? Can you explain that? What about this? What about that? I mean, he's basically like interrogating Gene in this review. Gene really takes a pound.
Yeah, and Gene's, I think what Gene's trying to say in that clip is, no, I can't explain all the plot to you because I've only seen it once. But also, like, it doesn't matter. The movie's not strictly about those things. And I think what's tripping Ebert up is this scene is so dramatically effective and intense that it threw off his ability to view the rest of the movie for as cartoony as it was. He thought it was trying and failing to be this realistic throughout the rest of the movie, when really this is just sort of an aberration.
Yeah, he's basically saying that it goes on and to the point of parody.
And, yes, very much so, sir.
Yes, that is true. That is true. But I found that review very fascinating because it's like he just lays into Gene, and Gene is like, look, I just really like the movie. I can't explain everything. It's just an entertaining film. I don't know what more you want out of me, but yeah, Ebert is just really goes off on him.
But even that, I mean, part of the reason we love Ebert is because he was wrong frequently and kind of unafraid to be wrong and unafraid to admit when years went by sometimes that, I messed that one up. And I think this is one he probably would look at more favorably years later. I really do think, though, but there's something like the reason why we're harping on Ebert here is because I think it's representative of some of the stuff we were talking about earlier and how the tonality of this movie throws people off. And it's hard to square that away into a single thing with how the rest of the movie is and then what this sequence is.
Well, Ebert's not wrong. Mink's body in Miller's Crossing is quite the contrivance that I don't know if I quite buy. So it requires a lot of the Turturro character. But
I don't think so. I mean, I think it fits entirely with what Bernie's character, that he has to get rid of Mink anyway at that point.
Yeah, but the fact that he would be like, I thought maybe somebody come looking for the corpse, and so I arranged it so this. It's just kind of. It was like, okay, I guess, but I made
sure that it would be unrecognizable, so that anybody coming across it would say, "Oh, yeah, that's obviously Bernie." So
it feels a little like they wrote themselves into a corner, a little bit.
I don't know. It feels to me like something that
they technically worked their way out.
But Bernie is an almost satanic is too grandiose of a term, but he's
the least ethical character.
Yes, so, but he is demonic in a sense. He's the demonic version of Tom, and Tom's plans are very circuitous this way too. And so, if Tom was completely divorced of conscience, I could see the Wario version to Tom's Mario, right? Go to all these ridiculous lengths.
Well, a lot of Wario talk.
Can we hat trick? Can we get a third Wario reference that comes up organically?
Then we get the rule of threes dictates we can't stop until I find one.
Well, we'll find it. It's got to be organic, though. The first two were. Okay, Turturro. Let's talk about John Turturro in this film, right? This puts him on the map. I mean, I think it's the 1-2 punch of Do the Right Thing in '89, and then this the next year. After that, he's like coasting. he's in movies forever because
Yeah.
look, shit, we got a great character actor here. Everybody, put him in your movie. Don't worry about it. He's going to be great on the strength of this work, I think.
Yeah, no, this definitely set him up. I mean, he was a great Weasel even a few years before that in To Live and Die in L.A. He's a really good kind of Weasley sort of figure there too. But yeah, I think this obviously sets him up for Barton Fink, which maybe not really a mass appeal sort of movie, but I think all of those really cement him as the character actor going forward in the 90s and onward.
But Barton Fink crucially also allows him to be a leading man, and not like he's not going to be the leading Con Air, but he can be an indie movie leading man and show some range beyond just doing the Weasel thing, which it would be very easy after such a standout sequence here in this movie to be typecast as, well, that guy's just the ultimate Weasel, and we can never see him as anything else.
Well, I mean,
he could never be Carmine Falcone. He has to be one of the flunkies that Carmine Falcone executes for fucking up.
I thought it was interesting in the Siskel and Ebert review, because when they're talking about Turturro, Siskel refers to him as he says something like, "Oh, you might remember him as the vile brother from Do the Right Thing." I was like, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's true. That is a description of him. I just thought the way to just kind of sum him up and Do the Right Thing is, oh, that's the vile brother.
No, he's the vile brother in this movie.
Yeah, he is.
Well, that's true. He's he's that also works. He could have described him in the Barton Fink review. You might remember him as the vile brother from Miller's
Yeah,
Crossing.
He's the especially vile one, even in comparison to the nasty gangsters, Well, he's the Waluigi to Polito's Wario is what he is, but
God damn it.
Even like physically speaking, that's real spit. They could pull off that as a couple's Halloween costume.
Yeah, that's spot on.
The thing about the Bernie character, but this I guess wraps back into my saying how the things don't line up exactly, because like what I said earlier about how this is a world where there's a story about ethics in a world where violence is divorced from ethics, and ethics are really more about honesty and duplicity and betrayal. Except the Dane is completely honest and straightforward and loyal to his capo, and but is still presented as a figure of malice and evil because he's so physically brutal.
He's
as a counterpoint to Bernie, who is this devious demonic figure who will just screw over everybody, including his own benefactors, at the drop of a hat. But he doesn't even fit entirely in. And it's not just that he's like all head and evil, because he will shoot Mink in the face too. So none of it lines up exactly the way that my English major wants like the symbolism to lock into make the essay I'm writing flow more cleanly.
Well, that is the thing with him secretly killing Mink and bringing the body back to the woods. It almost feels a little out of character for him as established. Like he's such a weasel, such a piece of shit manipulator, that it's almost like to get his hands on as that off camera even it almost takes you like, wait, is that right? He did do that? It's one of those things that you have to like kind of see the movie a few times to truly wrap your head around, is that this exists within him as well. Because he's just presents so completely as this needy creep.
His great threat to Tom is, if you don't give me the money time, I'm going to start eating in restaurants. What a weird threat.
He's such a piece of shit in this. It's like, it is a fearless performance. Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of role that can ruin your career, even if you do it right. Like you were saying, you could get typecast and never play another sympathetic role if you nail this too hard. And he kind of
knows as hard as he could. Did Barton Fink bring him back?
For sure.
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's a piece of shit in Barton Fink.
Yeah, but a very different way.
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
But it's true.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he just going all out in his big sequence here. It's a coward begging for his life scene that goes on for 5 minutes. that you can say that's a gift for an actor, but it's
That's
tough,
really
man.
hard, yeah.
That's a tough thing to pull off.
Yeah.
And and the fact that it is so demeaning for Bernie, I mean, that kind of bounces onto him a little bit, and he's just like, well, he's good at demeaning
Exactly.
himself.
That's a dangerous thing to do as an actor if you want to then be switching back to leading roles or something even closer to that. Even main villain roles.
I mean, my read on it is honestly like part of the reason that Tom spares him there is because of how embarrassed he is. Like, it's straight up just like, oh, God.
That's Bernie's read on it too. That's the other great thing about it. Even beyond that sequence, that show-stopping sequence is he then the character is playing that the rest of the movie. When he comes back to Tom's movie, he's like, yeah, that was a pretty embarrassing display, I guess.
Oh,
and
so good. That's such.
He's like trying to, obviously he's trying to resalvage control and get himself some hand there, but he can't quite shake out. Like, yeah, part of the reason I'm doing this, I'm screwing you over as bad, even though you show mercy on me, is because I'm so embarrassed by what you saw there.
Yeah. He's got that line. He's very, very self-aware. Really, he's got that line. I want to watch you squirm, and when you smart me, that ruins it. It's so good. Wow. I mean, just as written.
That particular line about when you smart me, it ruins it. He could play that a little bigger and a little shriller, a little more like comic, and it would ruin something about the character. But he also he plays it more malevolent. And I don't know. I don't know exactly what that amounts to, but I know that it helps the character in the end. I mean, this is a movie where the ends, the climax is with a villain sitting on his knees and begging the hero for his life, and the hero shooting him in the head in cold blood. And you are completely satisfied with that decision by the hero.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's yeah. That I mean, I was upset. I was upset that Casper was killed.
Yeah.
Like, I would have preferred Casper kill Bernie.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
It is funny. Like we do love Polito so much that he could have said like, "This is for Casper" before he did it, and that version would still play with me a little bit.
Oh yeah, me too. I've been like, yes, I agree. It is for Casper. I was upset when we just see him dead at the top of the stairs. Oh my God, that upset me.
Oh.
Okay, so this is 1990. Who do you nominate for Best Supporting Actor? John Polito or John Turturro?
I go with Polito.
I mean, is it a rule we can only do one?
No, I guess that both of them should be nominated.
They both, but then they're going to split the vote and lose. So, I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, neither of them are actually nominated, so, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Pacino gets nominated for doing the even more cartoony version of Johnny Casper. He gets nominated.
That's right.
For
Dick Tracy.
Big boy.
Pacino.
I like Pacino. I like him in there. But I think
put either of these guys in, though. I mean, come on.
I think Turturro.
He got nominated for Tracy and Godfather 3 that year.
I think Turturro has a better shot at actually winning, just because you can watch that 2 minutes in such isolation and be blown away by it so much. Like, well, obviously that's an Oscar-worthy supporting character performance. I would rather give it to Polito almost because it's like Turturro is Turturro, and we know that like he'll gather up other nominations and awards, and we know that Polito is no longer with us, and he did not, have a mantle full of Oscars at the end of his career.
Turturro's the kind of guy who, you expect to get an Oscar nomination, and it's the kind of role you expect to garner one. Even though it didn't. I don't know. Did Turturro ever get nominated? Has he been?
I don't believe he has.
That's nuts. But even still, Polito is the kind of guy that would never get an Oscar nomination, and this is sort of the apex peak of his career for sure. So
he's too inherently comedic. And we've been over a bunch of times how the Oscars are bad at recognizing that.
It's interesting that he basically Polito does not get a nomination, and it's a very little seen movie. But then the year later, Michael Lerner does for Barton Fink.
Oh wow!
Get nominated.
Don't get me started on that shit. I mean, you saw the movie to nominate Michael Lerner. Did you not see John Goodman in it? We'll talk about that.
I know. But the bottom line is Polito should have been. I'm not saying that he should have beaten Joe Pesci for the actual award, but I think Polito is definitely should have gotten his due here. And he did work a lot after it, so it's not like he disappeared or anything, but this role really should have raised his profile.
I mean, he is welcomed into the Coen Brothers stable, of course,
Sure.
because of this. You know, he's going to be in Big Lebowski and Man Who Wasn't There, and what's the other one he's in? He shows up again somewhere.
Oh, brother.
I think he isn't he in Hudsucker.
I think he might be. He should be.
Yeah.
He's got the. Yeah, he belongs in that. Anyway, he's there. He's one of the guys, and so's Turturro. Yeah, you know, he keeps popping up as well. Obviously, Jesus, Quintana, and yeah, I mean, they both. I mean, this is great for both of them. So, you know, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain Polito does not get his role in Blank Man if not for Miller's Crossing. So it all worked out.
Well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, he made movies like Blank Man. You know, that's the kind of career he had other than the Coens. Turturro ended up, you know, a ton of Spike Lee movies and it's all sorts of great shit like that. But again, you're right. Like he's a more limited actor. He just is. He's got the Wario-ness. Okay. Well, covered most of this here. Anything else we need to discuss about Miller's Crossing?
The only other notes I had was just like Coen Brothers motifs that show up here.
Sure.
This is a movie with a character that has a scene of a character describing a dream to another character they had, and they also show us that there is a dream sequence or a character describing their dream to another character sequence in every Coen Brothers movie I've come across so far. We'll look into that.
That'll be fun to track. Barton Fink definitely going to have you covered there. Yeah.
This one, it does not end on a punchline the way the last two have, and a lot of the others will. But in terms of, we haven't said the word nemesis yet in this podcast, but I'll throw it out there.
It is lacking that
kind of, but not really. It's actually it's kind of split up. That
you could throw the Dane in there.
The Dane is doing it like physically, kind of stalking the hero around, but it's the more, I guess, ephemeral, spiritual aspect of it is, I think, embodied in the Lazar, Gabriel Byrne's bookie that he owes money to, that is never seen, but is sending people after him. And this unseen figure hounding our hero over an unpayable debt is a thing that will recur. We'll see that in A Serious Man. It's a sort of motif that they like. And it's weird, like Lazar, is somebody who, again, never shows up on screen, still manages to cut a more benevolent figure than we might expect from the, retributive God of the Coen universe that sends, the sheriff after the guy's no brother, or the bully hounding the kid in A Serious Man. But I put it within that same, I don't know, general umbrella.
Sure, if we're, it would be the figure of this film that fills that role, perhaps. I mean, it's not one of the, not one of the ones you'd bring up as an exemplar of the trope within their filmography.
No, but
as we're looking for that figure everywhere, that is the role here.
But I mean, I think it fits almost because it would be so easy to take it out of there. Like, the movie does not need that.
That's true.
And that it is included feels like their preoccupations coming through. That they feel like somehow, even though this is early in their career and they definitely don't have if they haven't mapped out consciously now, they certainly didn't then. But they felt that the Dane was not quite shouldering the existential burden of being the nemesis figure enough, because he was too real of a human being.
Interesting. That's interesting. Okay. I like that. There's a lot of little moments here that are really extraordinary.
We could just quote lines at each other for a while.
Well,
we could, we haven't been talking about hi-hats.
If I have to go with just a moment, even though it's not, I wouldn't call it quite an action sequence. The scene where the Dane shoots the other two gunmen and shoots the guy behind. That's a great moment. It's not a full on action sequence, but I really love that. That just how long it takes for that body to slump over is just really, really great stuff.
Yeah, you don't think of this as being an action movie, which is why, I guess why part of why it feels like a different thing than some gangster movies that are more action oriented to me. But there are these sequences in here that sort of show, like, you can see them kind of like seeing, oh yeah, we could just do this straight up if we felt like it.
Yes. We could just just make an amazing gangster action film. We're not going to do that, but if we did, it might look a little something like this.
Yeah.
I have a great amount of affection for Johnny Casper's fat son in the sailor suit, and
The sailor suit is such a choice.
and how he interacts with him.
Being totally honest, what is your reaction when he hits his son? Are you laughing or are you horrified?
I'm laughing. It's John Polito.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah. And isn't it like right after that, he's like, yeah, he turns to Tom, he's like, you'll never know how fulfilling life can be.
Yeah,
oh man, that is. Yeah.
it's just, but that's pure Polito. Because if that was Joe Mantegna, then that scene would feel more malicious and less comedic. It would feel like watching, Bowser hit Baby Bowser. Whereas watching Wario slap Waluigi around, it's got a Three Stooges aspect to it.
Well, the sailor suit helps as well.
Yes.
I mean, he's just this funny kid. This is very interesting. This is in our Raising Arizona episode, which hasn't dropped yet. Did you know this, Chris, that Trey Wilson from Raising Arizona was the role of Leo was written for him to play?
Yes, I did. That I did read. But I guess he passed away, right?
He would have nailed it, I'm sure. He would have been great.
Yeah.
Other casting suggestions: Ian Holm, Richard Jenkins, and John Mahoney.
I can see Mahoney.
Yeah, he'd be good. Jenkins, interesting. He would have been young. So I don't know. I think Finney is who you want.
Oh, Finney's fantastic. Weirdly, of all those, I think Trey Wilson's the one I have the easiest one picturing. Although I'm aware that as I'm picturing him, like in the Danny Boy sequence, I'm actually putting Fred Ward into it.
He looks a lot like Fred Ward.
But like, see him stubbing out the cigar. I'm like, no, that's just a scene from Tremors. But if there's any others, we did Tom already. The only other one I mentioned, Bernie. One of the other suggestions was Eric Bogosian, which maybe a sliding doors moment for Bogosian, because I think he would have nailed this.
Yeah,
could have had a totally different career.
Yeah.
Well, then he plays a character named Dane in Under Siege 2.
Of course,
yes. Travis Dane.
Well,
yeah. You know what? Travis Dane is a great bad guy, and that movie's a lot of fun. You know, it's everyone working so hard to prop up this Steven Seagal film. You know, that's kind of both Under Sieges, really. Like everyone around him is working so hard to make the movie good.
Well, that's every Steven Seagal movie. It's up to everybody. It's up to everybody else to make it rise or fall.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay.
Well, they did it. They did a really good job in the first Under Siege of kind of softening Seagal to be a much more kind of mainstream, almost close to kind of a Harrison Ford type of guy. They do that.
Yes.
Yeah, they do that. And then in part 2, he just throws all that out the window and is like, no, I know what the audience wants. They want me at full 100% all dressed in black Seagal. And it wasn't quite as successful. Still a fine movie, in my opinion, but they definitely threw all of the softening out. But Bogosian's great in it.
Yeah. And he
is. And Everett McGill is too.
Oh, he's awesome too. They're a great 1-2 combo of bad guys. The bad guys are great. Jonathan Banks is in there. They got Peter Green in there. They got Patrick Kilpatrick. They got a lot of great guys for the heavies in it. But yeah, it's just they did all that work that they tried to soften Seagal a bit and make him a little more charismatic is thrown completely out the window.
So in conclusion, check out Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
If you have time, Miller's Crossing.
That is appropriate for matters in this world.
There, where the ties back.